following program is sponsored. The opinions and statements made by the hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the views of News Talk 600 and 100.3 WBOB or its parent company, the Chesapeake Portsmouth Broadcasting Corporation.
Good afternoon, folks. You're listening to Bob Wolf. I'm the host for the program known as We the People 1787. My co-host today is
Wes Bunce again.
Yeah, well, thanks for being with us last week too, Wes. And I know we've got a really interesting show for you today. At least I hope that you're going to find interest in it. We're going to discuss a couple of different things, and well, in fact, maybe three. I think one of the things we're going to discuss is going to be in-depth on Planned Parenthood, and this has been all over the news this week, but a lot of people don't have time to listen to the news. They work during the week, and they can't listen to what's going on. We're going to get into depth on this. Is this a moral issue? Should we, should you, should I care about what Planned Parenthood is doing and where they get their money? Who is paying them to do what they do? And we're also going to discuss something about our presidential running candidates, people that are running for president, running for nomination of the presidency. One of them is going to be Jeb Bush, a little bit, and another one may be Hillary Clinton. There may be some others, but we're going to have that. And then we've got a special guest with us today. He's going to serenade us with his instrument that you just love this, but he has written a book called American History in No Time. Now, this book's not very thick, so I didn't catch it. Well, it's only got a little over 100 pages in the book. It's a quick and easy read for people that, don't have a lot of time. And his name is Randolph G. Russell. So we're going to have him along as a special guest in just a little bit. So hang in there with us. Now, don't touch that dial. This is not going to be one of those programs that we're going to try to bore you to death. I'm going to turn the program over at this point to Wesley Bunce, my co-host, and he's going to get into some details that I know you're going to want to hear about.
I'm a parent, Bob, and I'm concerned about the future, not just for me, but my children and grandchildren that are coming behind us, and what kind of a legacy we're going to leave them. Well, the news that broke this week, an undercover video was released Tuesday by a top official at Planned Parenthood discussing the sale of organs harvested from aborted babies. This is not the first time there's been a scandal around Planned Parenthood because they're the largest merchants of abortions in the United States, and since the 1972 Roe v. Wade decision, we have all been struggling with, how we factor into this family planning. Planned Parenthood Federation is a 501c3 organization. That means it's tax exempt. So the United States government provides funding, which means you and our Congress provide money for this organization. The most recent is just over $500 million a year that we appropriate. As a matter of fact, it's $528.4 million from the U.S. government grants. They do over 327,000 abortions, and they do adoption referral services.
What kind of a budget do they have?
Their budget is over $1.5 billion total. So when you hear that big number, that $500 million, that seems substantial in and of itself. But when you think that it's only 1/3 of their total budget, they are worldwide, operating in countries all over the world. But this grotesque discussion that was caught by an undercover individual, really exposed the callous, almost lack of compassion for a human being. They don't refer it to a human being.
No, they don't just say it. It's a fetus.
It's tissue.
It's tissue. Yes.
They don't say anything else really about the personality that's created with life,
or that it is living inside the womb.
Exactly right. And life has been terminated, and now they're trying to discuss amongst their high-level officials. Dr. Deborah Catola. She's the senior director for medical services, and she's the one who was caught detailing what happens to the organs from fetuses that have been aborted. And she said, and this is, I quote, "I'd say a lot of people want liver, and for that reason, most providers will do this case under ultrasound guidance so they'll know where they're putting their forceps." And she goes on to describe other aspects of this, human harvesting.
I understand. They talk about what to crush, what not to crush, because muscle or heart or lungs, things like that are worth more money than some other tissue. So they're talking about how to crush the skull of the baby to kill that fetus, quote.
When the late-term abortion discussion came to Capitol Hill, I remember it was quite graphic about, the procedure of removing a baby that it's in its last trimester. And it was so grotesque that Congress did pass the law that restricts any funding for late-term abortions. We need to reignite this issue since we have a new Congress. And they set a new agenda. This is the 114th Congress. And our representatives in this listening audience, which would be Crenshaw, Yoho, Brown, DeSantis, they are in the budget cycle right now. And we just talked about $500 million going to this organization through grants. Well, Congress has their fingers on that part, and we should let them know where we stand as a people. This is not a government by edict. This is a government by consent. In other words, what do we want them to do? Now, this is not the first time that there's been a question about the activities of this organization. There have been at least 6 scandals involving Planned Parenthood over the years. Sexual practices, teaching, sex shops, schooling, trafficking. Here's a story that Planned Parenthood in the Rocky Mountain area was sued just last year for failing to report an abusive relationship in which a 13-year-old girl was being sexually abused by her stepfather, who forced her to get an abortion when she became pregnant. They were involved in this. The complaint alleged there were multiple warning signs, such as the girl being less than the legal age of consent in Colorado, the two going by different last names, and the stepfather pressuring the daughter to go on birth control. Well, so Planned Parenthood, which had provided this through their clinic, is, of course, drawn into this and the confidentiality issue. Anyway, you can read up on these in many stories. Heritage Foundation has done a very thorough job of kind of bringing the story to the forefront with credibility. The one I would really like to move this past is, not only just the funding from our Congress, but we want to get back after the break to talking about the foundations and the private companies who are funding this, and they're running away from it. Did you know that Ford and Coca-Cola and Xerox are saying, remove my name from the donor list?
We're going to get right back in just a moment. Don't turn the dial. I want to keep you in suspense for another couple of minutes.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Well, it's not Forrest. It is Bob Wolf, and it is my co-host, Wesley Bunce. But I'm telling you, this is the program that you've been waiting for. It's We the People 1787. And we're going to go where no man has gone before. We are going to have a little guest with us later on in the program, Mr. Randolph G. Russell. He's going to discuss a little bit about his book, American History in No Time. It's a short book, a short study, about 100 pages, and you will really enjoy this book. And now back to Wes, and he's talking about Planned Parenthood and who is funding these terrible atrocities. I think they are. If you don't think they are, check your morality.
Well, let's get back to the dollars and cents of abortion. You see, Planned Parenthood started nearly 100 years ago by Margaret Sanger, and of course has become a public name since Hillary Clinton, one of the presidential candidates, received the Margaret Sanger Award for doing the most to promote the liberation women's movement that we've been hearing bits and pieces of throughout our lives. Well, not only do we have the United States Congress funding And, of course, the new Affordable Care Act, Bob, requires that there be abortion funding. Of course, there was a Supreme Court case with Hobby Lobby. Now, they wouldn't be forced to carry an insurance program that carries abortion funding. So it's a major effort on our part to try and remove ourselves from mandates that are in violation of our religious beliefs. But anyway, back to the dollars and cents. We think that's a lot of money, $500 million. But then when you get into the rest of the $1.5 billion, you find out that there are private corporate donors like Coca-Cola, Ford, Xerox, Progressive, ExxonMobil, the laundry list of all the big names that run America. And they are the ones that are providing a predominant economic support to keep this, which is in right now under polling that I've heard recently, is it's falling in favor. Abortions are dropping in the United States. They're not increasing. But here we've got these big corporate donors who are now trying to escape and requiring that their names be removed from the donor list. There are 41 American companies supporting Planned Parenthood. Now we're going to go, as Bob just told me, he says, you're going to go where you've never been before. I'm going to take it to the foundations. And, of course, the one that's been in the news the most lately has been the Clinton Foundation. Let's talk about the Clinton Foundation for a moment. Obviously, Bill and Hillary Clinton getting a lot of attention. She's a candidate. The Clinton Global Initiative was begun back in 2007. It was created by the former president. And they would visit universities across the country, and they actually came to my alma mater multiple times. The most recent was March, just a couple of months ago. And they came there to make a special announcement. And the major announcement was being made is that the 14-year president, Donna Shalala, was leaving the presidency, and she was being appointed as the new head of the Clinton Foundation, in charge of those hundreds of millions of dollars that have been coming in, being raised by Bill and Hillary Clinton. It says here that there's another foundation involved besides the Clinton Foundation. It's called the Carnegie Foundation. And we're very proud of the fact that they said we're the first university to host the global Clinton Global Initiative twice. The university executive director said our facilities, our location, our emphasis on international engagement, I think that's all part of the reason they chose us again. So there were 1,100 students, Bob, 75 nations, and 300 institutions. It seemed like a big project they were having. Well, here comes the announcement right in the middle of this initiative. Yeah, there's the president, former President Bill Clinton, announcing that the former president, now Donna Shalala, was being recruited to head the Clinton Foundation. When she arrives, she'll receive this warm welcome, and that she will be a part of this ongoing, tax-exempt driving of their agenda. So now there's one other foundation involved in this Planned Parenthood. It takes it back to its original history, and that is the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation, which, of course, was the heir to the great fortunes created by Henry Ford, in 1913, when the tax code was reformed and we had the 16th Amendment, immediately thereafter there were tax shelters created for the wealthy. Carnegie, Rockefeller, Ford, those were the giants. The largest foundation created out of this new tax entity was the Ford Foundation. And I want to take this story so we can get a real feel for how serious this is. In 1952, a congressman who had been in office for over 30 years, named Carroll Reese from Tennessee, was suspicious of why the United States government, especially the State Department, were engaging in promotion of social change in the United States. What kind of social change? Well, there was the Lawyers Guild, there was the ACLU, there was Planned Parenthood. There were all kinds of organizations that were receiving large grants from the foundation and inquiring as to why the United States would be promoting such organizations that seemed to be anti-American. The chairman sent Norman Dodd, an attorney, investigator for the Reese Committee, to Ford Foundation headquarters in New York City to meet Roland Gaither, the new president. Mr. Gaither, here's the question. We have received information that your organization is funding some very questionable organization. We're at war with Korea right now, and you would think that Ford would be an anti-communist, a pro-American organization, but looking at this, Congress is kind of concerned where you're giving these tax-exempt dollars to these organizations. Can you answer why you're doing that? And he said, well, I'm operating under directives from the White House, the substance of which is to so alter life in the United States that we're going to make a comfortable merger with the Soviet Union. Now, you just think about that. The year 1952, we're at war. My uncle is over there. And we are going to aid and support the Soviets? I think not. That's what the investigator thought. That's what the members of the committee thought. So what happened? The subpoena was issued by the committee to testify and make that statement, not in New York, but right there in Washington. And what happened? The subpoena was never honored. It was never issued because the President of the United States canceled it. And as the investigations began and probed further and further, it began to expose rottenness in the State Department. Alger Hiss, as we now know, history has told us, went to prison, federal prison. He was a communist agent. He was in the State Department. There were 4 cells that were identified through congressional investigation that were exposed. Remember Richard Nixon, Bob?
Yes.
He was the guy that was serving on one of the committees in the House that brought about the Whittaker Chambers story. If you know your history well, you know that Whittaker Chambers turned on the Communist Party. He was an agent inside the State Department. He's got a great book you can read called Witness, where he tells the story. Richard Nixon actually presided over the trial known as the Pumpkin Papers, and that was the intricate exposure of the network inside the Communist Party, inside the United States. And for that, he got a lot of notoriety. Obviously, he became the vice presidential running mate with Mr. Eisenhower, and he went on to a second term. So he was thought to be the strong hardliner. And so what happened in 1955, 3 years later, the House of Representatives turned over, the Democrats took control, and all the committees were executed. So we never really got to the bottom of all of these nefarious, if I can use that word, these almost evil intended people to bring us into the Soviet orbit. Anyway, so I bring the Clinton Foundation forward because Hillary's in the news again. Bob, I think you had a story about 2 presidential candidates, her and Jeb Bush, that kind of indirectly ties into what's going on today in America.
It's really a strange thing, Wesley, really a strange thing that Jeb Bush is going to be awarding Miss Hillary Clinton the Liberty Medal on the eve, get this, the eve of the Benghazi anniversary. The former Governor Jeb Bush, he's a Republican, of course, running for president, or at least a presidential hopeful. And he's going to honor the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, with this year's Liberty Medal. Now, this Liberty Medal comes from the National Constitution Center. The award will be presented to Miss Clinton on, as I say, September 10th, the eve of the first anniversary of the terrorist attack on the United States consulate in Benghazi that killed 4 Americans. I just want to bring this up while I still have a moment or two, but on September 11th, right here at WBOB radio station, right here, we have a
tribute.
We have a tribute. We call it the 9/11 tribute, and it is about those that died in Benghazi. And we're going to have several guest speakers here, a couple of admirals. We're also going to have a former intelligence agent that is going to, for the federal government, that's going to be here to help to talk to the people, and also this little
gathering,
the theater, what do you call it?
It's the auditorium.
The auditorium. I couldn't get the
Salem
word.
Center here.
I had the Salem Center right here. We're capable of holding about 450 people here. So, look, there's still some room. You're going to have to email us or let us know that you want to, get in. And while there's still some seating left.
No charge.
No charge. This is absolutely free, folks. And you can email us at Freedom Speaks. That's Freedom Speaks with an S on the end of it at gmail.com. Freedom Speaks at gmail.com. And this is an event that I know you're just not going to want to miss it, because there is going to be entertainment here as well as learning event. And we're going to have a true tribute to those who died. It needs to happen.
From someone who said, well, what difference does it make?
And getting back to that person, Bush's decision to honor Miss Clinton, who is considered by some to be a likely Democrat candidate for the president in 2016, was condemned by the Independence Hall Tea Party in reference to this award that I'm talking about. We're going to be back in just a moment, folks. You're listening to WBOB. This is AM 600 and 100.3 FM, The Answer. You're listening to We the People, 1787.
What it is.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Well, folks, this week you've got Bob Wolf and you've got Wesley Bunce as my co-host. I've got a caller on line one. Her name is Suzanne. Can you hear me, Suzanne?
Yes, I can. How are you today?
I'm just doing fine, Suzanne. Suzanne, you have a question?
Yes, I heard your comment. I'm driving in my car, and I heard you commenting on Hillary Clinton being given the Liberty Award.
That's right.
And the Jeb Bush is going to be giving her this award. Who in the heck decided that she was worthy of receiving a Liberty Award?
Well, the article...
was there an election? Was there an election for this award, or a writing campaign? Or how in the heck did anybody determine that she was the one worthy of receiving such an award?
This is a really good question. You know, the organization that is going to be giving this award is the National Constitution Center, and I looked at this. Go ahead.
I mean, that's unbelievable. I'm sorry. Maybe it's my naivete, but really, the National Constitution?
Yeah, I looked into it just a little bit, and guess who is the chairman of the board?
George Soros? I mean, I had no idea.
No, it's Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush is the chairman of the board. Now, ask me again, who may have, decided that Hillary would get this award?
Who would have decided such a thing? It just shows the collusion. This is what infuriates me as an American citizen. This is the very stuff that Donald Trump, I mean, I know people think that he's like the laughing stock, a joke.
Well, he's not a laughing stock in my book.
Americans are fed up with this BS. I am fed up with it. It shows the collusion of both parties. I am sick of it, and America is sick of it. I'm sorry to be ranting, but...
That's fine. I'm glad that we successfully aggravated someone enough to give us a call and let us know that they are actually out there listening.
No, I am listening, and I actually do comment a lot.
Okay,
to
good.
My radio. I just don't usually pick up my phone and call you to rant at you, because it's like the choir preaching.
That's okay. You can call us and rant anytime you want to. What I do is I throw stuff at my radio and my TV, and I swear and I do all kinds of crazy things. I shouldn't swear, I really shouldn't. I'm a Christian. I shouldn't do that. But they successfully aggravate me to the point where I'm just ready to tear things up.
Well,
I hear you.
Wes wants to say a word.
I want to make a comment. Really, we will be beset by challenges. Some call it sin, others call it bad behavior. And there's an old saying in the political world is what you throw money at, that's what you get more of. As you raise the tax rates or the tax incentives, it'll drive the national agenda. So where we are going here is that there's such an outrage about Planned Parenthood and what is going on right now that we have to look forward to solutions. And the solution has been before us for a few years. And that is there wouldn't be as much of this activity if we didn't have a tax code that promotes it. So
absolutely.
Here we got Planned Parenthood getting a 501c3 tax-exempt status to raise funds. And I've got a congressman here. Actually, we have three of them right here in the city of Jacksonville who are standing up to remove all of the tax incentives to promote this kind of activity. It's called the fair tax. It's H.R. 25. Rob Woodall out of Georgia sponsored the bill. And the Fair Tax Act will basically eliminate the selective process that our government directs our activities. In other words, we don't derive our income. We don't derive our taxes from income. We derive it from consumption, sales tax.
Yeah.
State of Florida doesn't have a state income tax. We have a state sales tax, and we run quite successfully with it. So the projected idea to do this nationally will end the lobby domination of what happens in the Capitol and around the country. And I think organizations like Planned Parenthood and others that use this tax code and where the IRS doesn't go after them, but they go after the Tea Party and the conservative organization, it's a selective witch hunt that's taking place by those in power. So we want to promote that. And you've got Ron DeSantis and you've got Andrew Crenshaw and Ted Yoho, congressmen surrounding our city that are saying we are ready for the fair tax. We support it. So you can thank them if you agree with them. If you don't, tell them too. That's what they're there for. They're our representatives.
Well, I am a fair tax supporter. My biggest favorite part of it is it abolishes the IRS.
Yes, it does.
I love that part.
I pointed out
God
to
bless
Wes.
you guys. Keep up the good work.
Well,
Thanks for coming
thank you.
in.
On her comment about abolishing the IRS, I pointed out a few minutes ago that the IRS, while it may be abolished, probably wouldn't happen all at one time because we know that there's going to have to be remaining a piece of that in order to kind of wrap up the existing business. That is, debts that are owed through former taxes and stuff like that by businesses and maybe individuals and so forth. And other investigations that they have gone ongoing. But I want to mention this. A newly formed organization called the Independent Hall Foundation is going to hold a What Difference Does It Make press conference on Independence Mall September 10th at 4 p.m. to denounce the selection of Ms. Clinton as the 2013 Liberty Medal recipient and offer an alternative award. So I couldn't find out where that other information was about the alternative award. I didn't have time before the show to look that up, but we'll try to find it for you.
No, this is the natural backlash. The opposition to the agenda, I call it. You have promoted by the leftists or even some people would want to call them Marxists. They believe that the government should dictate policy, that we should be statist as opposed to representative of the people.
Well, this thing about leveling the playing field, and I know probably a lot of you folks have heard that until you're sick about it, but the leveling of the playing field means that actually those in middle class probably will be brought down to the level of others. Everybody is going to be like the same. You'll even be told under certain circumstances how much you can earn at whatever kind of a living, whatever job you have, whatever your vocation is. You think I'm kidding about that? Ask doctors right now if they're not actually being told how much they can earn. Why do you think a lot of doctors are leaving the profession? Well,
that is the question: is who's directing America's future? Is it really we the people, or is it an agenda driven by presidential campaigns? You need to be a part of this. This is what it was designed for. We're going to be hearing from Randy Russell at the after this break, and he's going to be giving us a different look at America from a historic perspective. He's a teacher, and he's well versed and studied in the subject of where America came from in his book American History in No Time. Less than 200-page, I call it a schematic, if you want to look at it that way, progressively from, the time that we found native tribes in America here, and even before the nation was named, and today where we stand. So what happened? The American institutions were brought about by good men and women of goodwill trying to provide for their families, which is what we're trying to do. And they want to have a government of freedom. Sam Adams said, freedom's a gift from God. And if that's true, then let's not remove the moral compass that is about our nation. And let's bring in righteousness, because that does exalt a nation. Sin's the reproach to the people.
And I want to mention again about the free event that we have coming up on September 11th, right here at the Salem Center If you want to, what you need to do is please email us at freedomspeaks1787 at gmail.com. You can email Bob, that's me, or you can email Wes. The object of that is to let us know that you would like to come. We're going to make reservations for you. It's absolutely free, but we need to know that you're coming because there is limited seating. I think we are going to fill that auditorium up. Some of the speakers that we have are people who have had a direct correlation to what occurred in Benghazi, and they are going to tell you a surprising story. They're going to bring out details of things that people like Trey Gowdy, who runs the commission on the exposing the truth about what occurred in Benghazi, needed to know. Some of the speakers up there know.
Well, don't forget also our guest next week, Bob, is Ryman Schoaf. He's the MC for this event. We'll have him in studio.
That'd be terrific. Folks, we're going to take a short break. Don't turn the dial. We got a special guest coming up for you. That's Randolph G. Russell, and he's going to serenade us with his instrument. So stand by for excitement, folks.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Well, you're back with Bob Wolf and Wesley Bunce, and we're going to have a guest in a moment. This man is going to play an instrument for us. So this is a little bit unusual for this program. We have been discussing a lot of very interesting subjects today. One, Hillary Clinton being given an award by Jeb Bush. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it next week as well. And also Planned Parenthood dividing parts of babies up to sell the parts. And Wes Bunce?
Well, American history. Those who refuse to learn from history are condemned to repeat it. I'm glad to welcome Randolph Russell in his book, American History in No Time. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, I got the privilege of meeting you in person at an executive committee meeting where you spoke about this, and I said, boy, there's a guy that needs to have his voice heard in a wider range than a room of 50 people. And so tell us where you come from, Randy, your history. I know you're a Floridian.
Yeah, born and raised in South Florida.
Okay.
And I started out as a professional musician. And I toured all over this country and Europe. So there aren't too many places in this country where I haven't been, at least in that place or very close to it. So that's helped me to increase my love for this country because I've seen so much of it, you know. Mm-hmm. But now what I do is I'm the author of American History in No Time. This book is the quickest and easiest way for anyone to learn the basics in just one sitting. It's also the perfect refresher and a great way for parents and grandparents to ensure that their families have a solid foundation.
Yeah, that's what really attracted me is that we need to get parents in on this because the public education system has left us devoid of our roots, of our heritage.
Right. I know Wes said a while ago the book was about 200 or a little less than 200, but it's not. It's only just about 100 pages, so it's not hard to read.
Right. And it's divided up into short sections that can be read in around 5 minutes each. The entire book can be read in just a few hours.
Right.
And it's geared to a general audience, but it has been used at a number of colleges, including University of Central Florida and Eastern Florida State College. And so it's an easy way for anyone to learn the basics in just one sitting.
Now, how will people be able to buy the book if they would like to go out and get this book?
My website is the name of the book, AmericanHistoryInNoTime.com. And there you'll find a link to Amazon where the book is sold as a Kindle version or an ebook for $7.95 and $12.95 for the print version.
Gotcha.
Well, let me ask this question. Where did America really start?
Well, it didn't start even with Columbus. There was a rich many rich cultures when the Europeans arrived. Researchers don't really know how the America was first populated, but certainly by 13,000 years ago, they found evidence that the Clovis culture is where they think was existent 13,000 years ago. And so I mentioned that and kind of bring it forward. But that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of. One of the questions I ask people to kind of pique their interest is what Native American structure has a larger footprint than the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. And most people have never heard of Cahokia. It was a city of the Mississippian culture that is 10 miles from St. Louis, and that modified pyramid actually is bigger than 16 square acres, bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. But I mean, that's just one example. It's an incredibly rich culture. So I include that in the book, along with everything else in the colonial period, the founding, and on up to the present day.
Well, we like to, in our show here, we like to refer often to the colonial period, but here we live in a city. I live in St. Augustine. It is celebrating 450 years, long before Jamestown and Plymouth Rock and the other places up in the eastern shore. But we were establishing a civilization here, and it goes long before that even. Sure. So that's why I think we start at the beginning, and that gives us a progressive look at how we not evolved in terms of our amoebic construction, but how we evolved as a family, how we took care of ourselves and how we fed ourselves. And I love it. I've just finished the book, and it is a good quick read, and it touches on the major points all along the way, and so you aren't disconnected by somebody's intent.
Well, hopefully it gives people a sense of history and a desire to know more. And if they have that sense of curiosity, then maybe when people come to visit Disney World in Orlando, that they will travel 2 hours away and visit St. Augustine, the oldest city in the continental United States.
Yeah, it's funny. I got a letter from my brother. He's a Vietnam vet like you, Bob, and he doesn't write me very often anymore, but he sent me a letter, and in the letter was a folded-up Chicago Tribune full page. 450 years, St. Augustine is getting younger. That was the headline. I read it. Here I'm living in the town, and I was just thinking, what a beautiful expose of what a rich heritage we have. And, of course, I'm sure everybody in the listening audiences has been there. It always promotes you to come back again and take a look at a different aspect. And I've never seen all of it, and I've been living there 9 years.
Sure. There's
a lot of great history there.
Yeah, it's who was it? William Faulkner, who said history is never dead, or the past is never dead. It's not even past. So it really is all around us, and so that's one of the things my book does. I think is it gives people a sense of history and a desire to know more.
I served with and for Dr. Larry McDonald, who was a historian. As a matter of fact, he's an unusual man in that he was George Patton's nephew, and it was instilled into his family roots that you must go back and study the history before you can have debate on common current issue. And he instilled that in me, and so I began early in my career, 20s, I started having this thirst for American history, and it drove me into things like today's discussion. We don't really understand foundations and how they apply until you go back and find out what caused them. Because we didn't have foundations in the early 1800s. They didn't really start until we had the big giants of industry and trying to find ways to hide and shelter this huge, massive fortune so they wouldn't lose it. They could pass it on from generation to generation. Well, maybe we aren't so much for what's inside those organizations and leadership today, and what decisions are they making? Are we really for the Liberty Medal being given to the Clinton Foundation leader?
Right.
Maybe not.
Well, one of the polls I cite often is by an internet affiliate of Newsweek magazine, and they found that 70% of adults aren't aware that capitalism is the economic system in the United States. 2/3 don't know that. 70% don't know that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and 81% cannot name one power belonging to the federal government. Until these basics are understood, it is hard to have a meaningful conversation when they don't even have the basics. And so I believe one of the reasons that is because students and others don't start out with the big picture. Before detailed information is presented, you have to see the big picture, and the big picture is easier to grasp in a short volume. Hence, my book.
Right.
So in just a few hours, anyone can have a solid foundation.
Well, this could go on for hours. You and I were discussing at the beginning, before we even came on studio, an important aspect of what's going on right now. And we can do that, but we've got just a little bit time left. And what we'd like to do is have you entertain us and our audience for a moment, if you can, with this beautiful song, America the Beautiful.
America the Beautiful on a saxophone, no less.
I do it now, or
Right.
Go.
okay.